Hello and welcome to the 28th episode of the From the Vault podcast. I am your host, the incorruptible beacon of shining light, Nathaniel and with me, the Dark Lord himself, the degrader of all things holy, Holt. How are you doing?
I feel a little bit attacked here. I mean, I don't know, I usually see myself as kind of a purifier rather than a corruptor, but I guess it really depends on your perspective.
Yeah.
I suppose to a lot of really evil beings, what I do might be seen as corruption, but overall, I think I'm a pretty good influence on basically the world.
That's fair.
I think actually that I pierce through the darkness instead of you. But I could be wrong.
You do have a Craig Wesco pillow on your sofa.
That's true. It's the most white thing, but I'm not sure that really relates to the ideals of justice.
I feel it relates to most things about you, though.
Go on.
No, I think that's fine. I think that's enough. That's enough said about that.
To be fair, I think my proudest moment in my Magic career thus far, besides queuing up for the WMC, was when Craig Wesco gave me a shout out for using my deck at, I think it was Pro Tour Amonkhet.
Yeah, it was Amonkhet.
I was like, I got this deck from a 5-0 list made by Big Boss 5150.
Yeah.
And he proceeded to...
You weren't even watching at the time.
wasn't.
We were watching the PT and we messaged you being like, oh my god, Holt, your hero just gave you a shout out on the Twitch channel. He's actually playing your deck list. And you were like, what? You guys trolling me?
Yeah, I didn't believe it.
Yeah. Me and Dan met Wesco in Vegas and talked to him a bit and we're like, hey, just to let you know, our friend whose deck list you played, really appreciated that and was super excited about that. And he was like, oh, that's really cool. He was playing Death and Taxes and Legacy, in case anyone was surprised by that knowledge. But that was cool.
I was about to... Yeah, I think that was a pretty proud moment. I think that shows how I'm the light. I think you're definitely more of the darkness.
I feel like you're definitely being hung up on these opening nicknames here, Sauron. But anyway, let's talk about magic-related things as opposed to magic tangentially related things.
What? What do you want to talk about?
So let's talk about the most recent triumph of a member of the podcast, which was Holt and his team. Playing the Scottish Store Championships, a tournament we talked about last time on the podcast, which was a little while ago. I'm afraid the last episode I think got delayed due to illness.
Yes, I was unfortunately stuck in my house. I had what my doctor referred to as a gut issue. So I was pretty laid out. So unfortunately, we weren't able to do the podcast last week.
But yeah, we're back. We're back now and raring at full speed and full volume. And full glasses. I don't know. Yeah, let's talk about Scottish Tour Championships. What did you guys play in the end?
So for those who are listening who might not be a Scottish local, just to recap from the last podcast, the Scottish Tour Championship is a tournament that's organized with all the stores in Scotland, basically. They're all invited. They can send a team of 3 people, and the format is whatever the WMC is. And
so in this case, Unified Standard.
Exactly. And then basically it's used as a way for the team to practice.
Yeah. It's always been a way for the community to support the team and help them practice and get in actual reps in a tournament setting for the World Magic Cup.
Exactly. So we went, since it was Team Unified Standard, basically, the way we looked at the Scottish Store Championship is it was a good chance to test run weird stuff.
Sure.
Okay, there's a bit of pride on the line in the Scottish Store Championship, don't get me wrong, and some stores are more competitive about it than others.
Yeah, but there is no pride on the line for the Scottish team. They have, I think, never done well at this event.
Yes, the Scottish team has historically done horrific, but then ended up doing well in the WMC. So we kind of approach it okay, this is practice. Let's push the boundaries. Let's try some things we normally wouldn't. Let's take this as a research opportunity, basically.
Sure, I think that makes a lot of sense.
So instead of doing the kind of more conventional stuff we were talking about last time with green-black, Jeskai control, mono-red, etc., these kind of level 1 configurations.
You went for my configuration, all aggro, all the time.
We did not go for Team America.
I'm very disappointed.
I'm so sorry, Nathaniel.
Okay.
sorry, not sorry. We ended up playing a green-white deck. So, Sapling Migration, Adanto Vanguard was the big inclusion for that. We kind of decided, we definitely want an Adanto Vanguard deck.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Just because there's so few answers to it, and...
It's probably one of the best aggressive 2-drops in the format right now.
It's not the best, I would actually argue. I think it's very, very good. And I think that shows...
I'd be interested to know what you think the best aggressive 2-drop in the format right now is, then.
I think it's Adanto Vanguard.
Oh. Okay, the misunderstanding.
I said it's the best.
Oh, okay.
Not one of the best.
Okay, sure, yeah, no, I agree. I think it is the best aggressive 2-drop in the format.
For sure. So we played this it was playing March of the Multitudes as well. It was also playing Carnage Tyrant, because we figured, if we're playing a green deck, we want Carnage Tyrant in it.
Sure, also Tyrant, I think we were talking about before, is just generally quite good against a lot of the field, but also the green-white decks, what they traditionally struggle with is Deafening Clarion.
Yes.
And other decks that play sweepers.
That's exactly how it went off as well. Danny didn't lose a match. So Danny was piloting that, and he said so many times, someone was like, sweep your board, and he was like, cool, untap Carnage Tyrant? And they're like, ooh.
Yeah, and suddenly it's I used my sweeper already, be it Cleansing Nova, or more likely, something like Settle the Wreckage, or Deafening Clarion, and suddenly it's okay, do you have another one?
Yeah.
If you don't, you're going to die really quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of went off without a hitch. He did very well. Steven was playing... Okay, I guess I'll actually lead with mine because it's a bit more conventional.
Sure.
We were talking about it last time that I was a bit interested in trying the Grixis decks.
Yes.
And so we ended up putting that together. So in that seat, I was playing Grixis. And I found it to do very well. I was very impressed with it. I lost... I guess over the course of the day... I lost 2 matches.
Sure.
Out of 7 rounds or 6 rounds.
That's
so not amazing, but luckily we had the team carry in the finals. So because I lost in the finals. But overall, played really well. It felt like when you were ahead, you were just really ahead. Had tons of tools to grind. A lot of the threats just had to be dealt with immediately, and you had the sort of great removal suite to deal with all the stuff that's problematic. I killed some Adanto Vanguards with Moments of Craving. That feels good.
Yeah, it's strange to me, but it feels like black is better at killing Adanto Vanguard than white is, almost.
For sure.
Mostly because black has access to Golden Demise and Moment of Craving and Fungal Infection is even a playable card.
Even Frasco's Contempt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sometimes it's oh, yeah, this is the thing that does it. Bam, kill it.
Whereas, white does have access to exile removal. Seal Away is theoretically very good at killing a Adanto Vanguard.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Conclave Tribunal. But it just feels a lot like Conclave Tribunal is hard to fit into your non-Adanto Vanguard white decks.
Yes. And
Seal Away is so specific and hard to play that many copies of because... Mm-hmm. If you're not playing into Adanto Vanguard, your opponent goes okay...
History of Benalia.
Yeah, History of Benalia. Or Goblin Electromancer, and you're I need to kill that, but I can't.
Yeah, hopefully they attack.
Yeah, hopefully they attack with their Electromancer, and then later on in the game they're okay, attack with Crackling Drake, and you're seal away, and they're dive down? And you're oh, yeah, that makes sense. That's what I'd do.
Rip me. So I was playing Grixis. We were playing 3 copies of Disinformation Campaign in it. That was kind of one of the cards I was a bit how much do I want to lean on this? And I was playing 4 Thief of Sanity main.
All right.
In the sideboard, pretty much all the red cards, we found it pretty easy to sub out for more Golden Demises rather than Fiery Cannonades. It's not exactly the same. It's a bit worse against, specifically History of Benalia, I think. But it's better against other cards, like Adanto Vanguard, which can be problematic. And then I was also playing a Nezahal in the side.
Oh. Never lose those control mirrors.
And after the tournament, I found the only thing that I really lost to, besides bad draws, was Carnage Tyrant. So I've been since then I've been thinking about adding some Night Veil Predators.
Bonus Hunger?
Bonus Hunger. So that's the 3-mana Edict, but if you have the Sage Blessing, they edict 3 things?
They edict half their board.
Oh, right. Okay.
There's a couple of edicts. I remember people asking around them. I think in the game Discord at one point, people were asking for various edicts, and I found a couple of them.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a few edicts in the format. I think that's... Personally, I've been more excited by that than Night Veil Predator. I feel like Night Veil Predator, while it does do the job of answering Carnage Tyrant, it only does the job of answering Carnage Tyrant after you've taken 4 damage, which can be quite relevant.
Yeah, for sure. I'm still happy enough with something that's able to trade. I generally found even smaller flyers were just good against green-black.
Sure.
And a lot of those games you win by just racing and being like,
I can believe that.
Play a Thief of Sanity, play a Nicol Bolas,
I would be slightly worried, actually, if I'm specifically trying to counter green-black with Nightveil Predator. I'd be worried about finality.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a really nightmare scenario of, like, they play Carnage Tyrant, and you're like, haha, Nightveil Predator. And they're like, okay, finality the board, make a 9/8 attack, and you're like, oh, well,
For
that's
sure.
that.
I think it's the tough part, and actually I just despise Carnage Tyrant. I despise it as a card so much. I hate playing in formats where cards like this are good.
Yeah, it's not a very interesting game. It's not a very interesting Magic the Gathering card to have in your game, I don't think. I think it's like a very brute force way to make your like green decks not just lose to the control decks. Because without it, a lot of the green decks would be way worse against the control decks, right?
100%.
But it's just this like super like, okay, cool. All the normal control tools don't work against this. You have to be playing very specific ones. Yeah. Kind of card. I don't think it's a very subtle way of doing that. It does feel a little bit to me like they knew Teferi was going to be really good. And they wanted to like... And also maybe they were figuring like, hey, well, the Scarab God's also kind of insane. And we want a card that specifically is good against those sorts of archetypes. And like counterspell-based control. But I do kind of wish they'd found a slightly subtler way of doing it than...
For sure.
Just a massively overstated, like, nonsense creature.
I think there's also another level to it, which is also, like, in terms of answers. Like, yes, White has pretty reasonable answers to Carnage Tyrant in the form of Sail the Wreckage and Cleansing Nova, but I feel like those are the only cards that have, like, really good, efficient ways of dealing with a Carnage Tyrant, besides, like... I mean, there's the Eldest Reborn and Edicts, but oftentimes, like... So one of the reasons I was not looking as closely at the Edicts is, first of all, I already have Eldest Reborn in my deck.
And because your opponent will frequently have, like, multiple creatures in play.
Yeah, like a ton of Llanowar Elves.
Yeah. The reason why I think
whatever.
that Bonus Hunger is slightly more interesting is because being cheaper than the Eldest Reborn makes it much easier to, like, combo with, like, a Golden Demise.
Yeah.
It's much easier to be like, alright, Golden Demise, kill everything small, Bonus Hunger, kill your big thing.
And I do think that is some of the weakness of the deck, is sometimes it's just, like, really chunky 4-drops. And 5-drops and 6-drops, and like early on you have like this kind of discard suite.
Yeah, but if you're on the draw, it's like...
Yeah, it can be super awkward. And if you miss a land drop at any point, like before turn 5...
It's really hard to catch up.
It's like... Ooh.
Because your catch-up mechanism is like slamming big haymakers in succession.
Exactly.
But if you miss a step on one of those haymakers, it's like, okay, big haymaker, and they're like, right, answer it. And normally the deck is like, okay, answer this one, and answer this one. But if you like pause for a turn on that, then they're like, okay, deploy a threat.
And you're like,
oh no, I'm so behind now.
Yeah, and I think this is a big thing to think about, like Thief of Sanity versus Sinister Sabotage. And I feel like that's like the big like pivot card in how you can build the deck. I was playing much more of a mid-rangey version, but you can make like what what's it called? I think Shota was playing a very controlling version at the Pro Tour. I could be wrong. It might have been someone else.
I mean, it sounds like Shota.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've heard good things about Thief of Sanity to some degree. Like, apparently, it's just the most absurd snowball card.
It is.
Like, once you get in one hit with it, you're probably going to get in another hit with it because you can use the card you got from the first hit to, like, protect it and keep their board down.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've gotten, like, 2 or 3 hits in with it, it's just really hard to lose a game.
Yeah, I've found the fail case on Thief of Sanity to be very low percentage so far. I've been playing it a lot more online, but I've not really had the same... I don't think I've had a run that felt quite as strong as I did at the Scottish Tour Championships.
Sure.
But anyways, going back to that,
yeah.
Our third seat was the complete nonsense deck that Stephen really wanted to try, which is fair.
Yeah, I think trying it in these sorts of environments is definitely the right thing to do.
Yeah, better here than the WMC is the idea. And he played the red-green experimental frenzy deck.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit because I played this deck a bit and I was not that impressed, but it does do some very busted things sometimes.
Yeah, I forget what Stephen's record is. Not that it super matters. Like, I don't want to be too results focused, but I think he might have taken the most losses throughout the day, out of the 3 of us. But or he lost 2, just like me, something like that. We all ran reasonably well and got carried by Danny. But the deck looked interesting. We had a great chat about it afterwards, and Stephen like the team kind of talked about it and discussed it and seemed to say like, yeah, it didn't perform as well as I'd hoped. I think probably green-black would be a bit better than that slot. We should probably think about configurations using that, or like moving more towards something like Arclight Phoenix.
Sure.
And considering that. So, we ended up winning the tournament, if it wasn't clear already. So we were the first Scottish team to be able to take it down, which is... We don't know if that's a good or a bad omen yet, but...
I feel like it's not an omen at all, and I think you should just take wins where you get them and be happy about them.
Okay, I'll be happy about it then.
Good.
I was happy about it.
Good.
I took the trophy home, I brought it to Murph. It kind of threw the Scottish community into a bit of chaos.
Yeah.
And maybe Gaz and Murph's relationship as well, because there's no protocol at all for what happens if the Scottish team wins. Because normally what happens in the Scottish
team... It was just never a consideration before.
Yeah, no one decided
expected the Scottish team to win.
Yeah, exactly. So there was some discussion about where it will be next year. Because normally, basically, like there's 11 teams this year, I think. And...
Yeah, normally it goes to the winners.
Yes, exactly. Whoever wins
so last
the
year, Highlander won, and they got to take it back to Highlander.
Exactly. But obviously, the Scottish team doesn't hail from a specific shop. So there's some questions about that, some debates. We still don't know where it is next year, but oh well, we won.
We'll figure it out.
Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
That being said, looking forward, I think... I don't know. I'm glad Danny was saying in some of our conversations the other day that he can't imagine a config that doesn't have green-black at some point. I'm glad we arrived at that, and that I think the Scottish Store Championship was a good data point for that. I'm still experimenting with the Griskus deck, trying to figure out what it needs. If not, I might go back to take Arclight Phoenix as my slot and reprise that deck. It's still good. It's fun to play.
Yeah.
So
went 10-0 at the PT.
And I think also, like, there's going to be... The biggest question I think that I need to test a lot with that deck is how it matches up against the white decks. Because I imagine after the Pro Tour, it could be that a lot of people in their aggressive slot are going to be playing mono white or Boros.
Yeah. I think that segues quite nicely into the PT, which we actually aren't going to talk about that much. The tournament was really cool and interesting. There was a ton of great moments. And the top 8 was slightly misleading. Because if you actually look at the stats of what did well in Standard, it was pretty varied and a lot of different stuff did really well over the course of both days of Standard play. Mm-hmm. But the limited results eventually ended up determining who actually made top 8s out of the people who did well in Standard.
Right.
And the people who did well in Limited happened to be playing Boros or white aggressive strategies.
Mm-hmm. And of course they must have gotten a reasonable enough record.
They also did well in Standard. It was just that other decks also did as well as they did in Standard.
Mm-hmm.
There was plenty of Golgari, plenty of Izzet, plenty of green white, I think, as well. There was plenty of Control. There was a mono blue list that went 10-0. Which, I mean, so I've heard some people describe mono blue as basically like it gets better the weaker your opponents are, in exponentially more than other decks, because the weaker your opponents are, the less likely they are to be able to play around counter spells effectively and sequence and time their spells very well, and they're much more likely to be like, all right, jam into this, jam into this, jam into this, which is exactly what mono blue wants, right? They want to go play a thing on 1, play a thing on 2, have you jam into my counter spells for the rest of the game, and eventually kill you with one of my big threats. Mm-hmm. So, for someone to go 10-0 at the Pro Tour with a deck that people describe like that, where it's it gets better the weaker your opponents are, and it's
he did it at the highest level.
Clearly, the deck actually has some legs to it. It's been, I think it's been the subject of a bit of debate, actually, in the kind of, Magic community from, the good Standard players of, wait, is this deck actually good? Because I feel like it can't be that good, but then it also, didn't it make the finals of a GP the week before?
Yeah.
And then also, 10-0 a Pro Tour, and they must be getting lucky, but maybe the deck's just good.
Yeah. I mean, I think the deck has legs. I think the deck is real.
I think the deck has a lot of power behind it.
I think it requires it demands a certain level of pilot skill, and I feel like you have to be very focused and realize what your game plan is.
Yeah, you have to really recognize what is important within the game you're playing.
Exactly.
What is just irrelevant.
But if you can do that, and you can leverage the tools you have in the right way, it's really powerful. This has been shown.
And also if you get a little bit lucky, but that's true of all Magic.
That's all, yeah. I think every Magic tournament, and I think I think very few, if any, pros would disagree.
Yeah.
That to do well at an event, you just have to run hot and
Yeah.
be like, "Yep, I drew the things that I need."
You can play as well as you like, and that will help. Like, you have to not lose the games that you would lose because you messed up.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also have to not lose some number of games that you would lose if you got unlucky.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, all that discussion aside, I don't want to talk that much about the PT because I feel like a lot of other people have already dissected the tournament and really spoken a lot about it in a way that is more insightful and authoritative than I think we could be, or we'd just be rehashing their points.
Yeah, I think when you the Pro Tour is one of those things that, of course, everybody loves, but also gets a ton of coverage, not just from Wizards, but, whether it's Channel Fireball, SCG, or whatever, tons of people are scrutinizing the results. Very good players, very insightful folks, to the point where it's like, well, we're going to read those articles. Are we just going to be regurgitating that stuff?
Yeah.
I'd rather think about how we might apply that stuff going forward to other events and think about other events where this stuff is going to play out in and how we want to think about that.
My one big takeaway from the PT would be to, not trust the top 8.
I would agree.
Boros is a good deck, don't get me wrong, but it is not the best deck, and I do not believe that there is a best deck.
Yeah, I think Standard is good right now in the sense that there isn't really this tier 0 or this deck that just keeps on winning all the time. It's a lot of King of the Hill, you know what I mean? I would say, be probably a bit more prepared for Boros, because people are going to see those results and be like, oh, 6 of the decks for Boros in the top 8, it must be busted. So tons of people are going to pick up this deck that were not playing it before. However, that doesn't mean you should. I would say just be prepared for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad choice going forward either.
Yes.
But I think that, just being mindful of the idea that, it's not Team or Energy.
Yes, exactly. Or red-black. Ugh.
So, talking about applying stuff going forward, I think actually that kind of links into the other topic we were planning on talking about, because there aren't that many tournaments to apply this to, at least in Europe.
Yeah, well, this is the thing is, to be honest, both of us were kind of meeting for this podcast to be able to talk about stuff, and there was this big question mark over our heads to be like, what do you really want to talk about? We have Liverpool coming up.
Yeah, it's a Team Modern GP.
And it's like, oh, do we really want to talk about Modern?
My testing for Modern so far has been hitting my head against a brick wall trying to play interactive decks and eventually just playing Burn. Yeah. And getting way better results from that.
I mean, we were even practicing last night and, I was playing Storm for the first time in a while and... it's like riding a bike. You never really forget, and that was fun. I tried Tron. Oh my god.
We did throw you against nothing but bad matchups for Tron.
For sure, but I think that really made me question why anyone would want to play this deck. I know Tron gets a bad rap, but jeez, I don't know. There were so many situations where I felt like, man, either this works or it doesn't. And, I guess it works enough of the time for it to be a good deck. But
it feels like a lot of modern decks end up like that. Playing Burn Online a lot recently, it's just been okay, well, a lot of my games come down to who won the die roll and what my 5th draw step is.
Yeah, well, this is the mad part, is, I don't know how Modern has such a big following. I get there's powerful things to do in Modern, but, I feel like a lot of the wins you get, I don't know. I enjoy playing Storm to a certain degree, but only in very specific matchups that are very interactive. In general, even though I love Storm as a deck, it's a lot of time where it's just I'm abusing people because they can't interact with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's not very fun Magic. To me, that's not what I look for in a game of Magic. Is not do you have it? Nope. I win.
I mean, I think Modern might be my second least favorite format, so it's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard to present a counterpoint. I do think, so from what I understand, people like Modern because there's huge variety, which definitely is a plus for a format, especially from a more casual perspective. It can sometimes be a negative from a tournament perspective because it becomes so coin flippy to be all right, I'll just bring whatever and we'll see what we face. But it's very wide. Ever-changing, but it also has these, pillars that maintain within it. If you bought Tron lands and Khans way, way back,
Mm-hmm.
You can still play those. Those are still competitive.
For sure.
If you brought a bunch of affinity pieces, you can probably either play hardened scales or even normal modern affinity.
Yeah, I was about to say, you probably can still just play it.
Yeah, you can still play that, and that's still pretty competitive. So this is kind of like, you can be much more attached to your deck and be much more of a specialist within your deck, which is something people do find attractive and people do like. People like the ability to go, all right, I'm going to play Storm because I've played Storm for 3 years and I know what I'm doing. And people become attached to their decks. People like to play them even when they're bad. They're like, oh yeah, no, I'm an Elves player. And stuff isn't very good for Elves right now, but that's okay. We'll rally, we'll get better later, and I'll find ways to beat people.
I guess that's a fair point. Maybe I'm unfairly being a bit too spiky in my review of Modern, but a lot of the enjoyment I get from playing tournament Magic is being like, the games have to be good. Yeah. I don't want to sit in a convention center for 9 hours or 10 hours on a main event day or whatever and just flip coins at each other. There's easier ways to do that. Yeah. A lot cheaper ways to do that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I will say, I think, so one of the team members actually said something in a recent discussion about Modern, that they felt that your enjoyment of Modern, it disappeared the moment that your tournament results depended upon actually playing Modern. Before you have major tournaments that matter, Modern's just kind of this fun, weird format, and crazy things happen in the games, and man, that was so close. It always feels close because all the decks are so powerful that when I first started playing Modern, people were always like, oh, I was one turn away from killing you. And at first I was like, oh, man, yeah, these games are really close. And then eventually I was like, I don't know, man, all the decks are really powerful. It's just how it works.
Yeah, that's how Modern is. Yeah. Every deck is one turn faster or slower than how the opponent is going to kill you.
I know you would have killed me next turn. That's why I killed you this turn.
Yeah,
kind of thing. So, I don't know. Despite all the things I've said there, I still don't really like Modern, and I think that, especially recently, it's just kind of sped up a notch.
Yes,
and it's become just a notch more degenerate.
Well, I remember when Splinter Twin was around, and I'm not saying Modern was great then, but it was definitely a lot slower and it felt more interactive.
Yeah, decks like Birthing Pod and Splinter Twin itself, and Jund was really good then. And I don't know, people say Jund's really good now. My experience has been that Jund is very medium now.
I definitely have played against a lot of Jund online where it's been pilot skill really, really required.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not even just about pilot skill. I think there's also just matchups where you sit down, and I don't think Tron is necessarily that matchup anymore. I think that matchup's gotten a lot better with the inclusion of Assassin's Trophy. Mm-hmm. But I think, and Bloodbraid Elf also helps because it provides an actual clock. You can Bloodbraid Elf cascade into Tarmogoyf, and suddenly you're actually killing your Tron opponent in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
But I think that the main thing for me about decks like Jund is that it's okay, we have to work really hard. So there is pilot skill, but sometimes you will just lose because it's Modern and you lost the die roll against Burn, or it's Modern and
or Dredge,
and you have a very discard heavy hand and you're on the draw against Dredge and you go, okay, cool. They face the living turn 1. Inquisition you. Oh man, okay.
Take nothing.
Take wow. Take an irrelevant card. Oh, I didn't draw any Grave Hate. They killed me. Mm-hmm. And there's always going to be those decks in Eternal formats that have access to really busted mechanics like Dredge or Storm that winning game 1 is really hard. But those just don't make for very interesting games, matches of Magic to me.
Yeah.
Where it's okay, cool. I'm not playing Magic the way anybody else is. You have to find very specific ways to interact with me, or I'm just going to kill you.
And I feel when you come up against those walls often, or even if you're playing the unfair deck and you have matchups like that, it just becomes a little bit disheartening.
Yeah.
It just becomes a bit how much, especially when you have the phenomenon, like you said, oh, I know how to play Storm. I've had this deck for 3 years. How much practice do I have to really put into this? How much practice should I put into this? Yeah. How much should I invest in
that's the thing for me is that people play Jund because they like playing normal fair Magic, and you work really hard for your wins in Jund, and then sometimes you work really hard and still lose because that's how Magic works, and sometimes you work really hard and still lose because your opponent's just playing some nonsense pile that you die to. Mm-hmm. And it just feels a bit man, why am I working so hard? There's decks that win about as much as Jund does, if not more, and have just free wins.
Yes.
Like, Storm is definitely a pilot skill dependent deck, right? You have to know what you're doing in Storm.
I wouldn't play the deck if it didn't have a very large percentage of free wins.
Yeah.
Like, I just wouldn't. Like,
yeah.
I would play a deck that had more free wins.
Yeah, like, because you can play these decks where it's like, okay, cool, yeah, you can leverage your skill and win in spots where other people wouldn't and feel smart and, like, feel like a good Magic player. But also you can just win in spots where everyone would win. And that's good,
That's
too.
fine. Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I remember when I started playing Modern, I used to play, like, Taxes variants, which are bad. Don't play them. If I can recommend anything to you. Fair enough if you enjoy playing them. I really like playing Death and Taxes and Legacy. Always have a soft spot for white weenie strategies. They're not good in Modern because of just hot nonsense. And you had to just work really, really hard to be able to win anything. And it totally changed when I realized, like,
I can
just do a really linear, proactive thing that I don't have to use the combat step. I can just kill you.
Or where just like, if I do my thing, you die.
Yeah.
And that's my that's my actual game plan. And so then my sideboard like augments that rather than being like a lot of fair decks are like, oh, if I do my thing, I stop you doing your thing and then eventually you die. And it's like, oh, okay. But like, so it's not really a game plan against a bunch of decks that have inevitability.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bunch of weird decks that steal inevitability from you.
Yes.
I
think the point is not to just rag on Modern for no reason, though. I want to go back and frame this about how we were talking about the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
And, like, how can we use these results from the Pro Tour? How can we think about them? Like, I've got the WMC coming up, but other than the WMC, there isn't a lot going on for Standard. And the WMC is even different because it's unified. So it's like, the other GP that's coming up is Warsaw, and Warsaw is limited. In Europe, I'm correct me if I'm wrong. I think we have a lot fewer GPs this year. I think we've got Prague and we've got Turin, and Turin isn't until like March.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up the schedule just now, but I believe this is November this year.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So
Prague's in January.
Yeah, we have Warsaw coming up, which is limited. We have Liverpool, which is a unified modern.
And then the WMC.
Yeah, then WMC.
But then after that, we're in a new season.
Yeah, then Prague's in January, and that's limited.
And that's going to be the new set, right?
I think so. It might be early. It might be too early in January to be the new set. I don't remember entirely when Ravnica
I think it does.
Release.
I think usually they drop around my birthday because I've been to a lot of pre-release events that are stamped with my birthday on them.
Oh,
January 18th. So I think it's normally somewhere around there. I'm not.
So if that was the case, this would be like earlier than that release.
Okay.
But we'll see. And then let's see. There is
Strasbourg,
which is limited in February. There's Bilbao in March, which is modern. There's London and there's Pro Tour London and Magic Fest London, which don't list a format yet.
Yeah, they don't have a format yet. So,
and then after there's no formats. So there literally is not a standard GP in Europe until, I guess, potentially London. So as a result, it's really just like PPTQs, the season of which is ending soon. It's really unclear what the new setup's going to be. There's going to be PTQs, but what is that going to mean? Yeah. And like for you, for example, you're trying to go for bronze off of the WMC and like trying to queue for things and get points at GPs, and it's like, okay, well, what does that mean now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it just buys?
Like I know,
is that worth 10 pro points?
Yeah, like I know one of the big things that, like, I want to make bronze for me. And actually, I'm going to push this to where I wanted to push the conversation. Is like, okay, if we don't have these external, tangible things, tournaments, that we are playing this game to prepare for, how do we get motivation to keep up with this stuff? How do we keep pushing ourselves? Because Magic's hard. It's a massive time commitment. It costs money, frankly. Yeah. How do we make this meaningful if we don't... I guess I'm thinking more kind of, oddly enough, sort of existentially about the team as well, Team Vault, and like a big part of our culture has been in the last 2 years, like grinding PPTQs. GPs are part of that, and we want people to come to GPs, but actually one of the biggest things was like, okay, the weekends we have tournaments, you show up, we go together, we crush this thing. If someone wins or tops 8, we're right there with them. And then we come back. And it's kind of like this ongoing support almost of like, yes, we're helping each other get better, but we're also helping us keep up with this.
Yeah.
We're helping...
Because the grind of PPTQ is pretty grim, really.
It is. But now I'm like in this weird place where I'm like, well, why? I mean, obviously I have the WMC up, but if I wasn't queued for that, do I just not play Standard now? That seems like... I don't know, to me that sounds like a way that you're going to end up kind of falling behind. Or not keeping up with what's going on or whatever.
Well,
but
it just ends up... For me, for example, it's really hard to be motivated to, like, buy a Standard deck. Because, like, do I really want to spend the money on buying Standard cards for what, PPTQs?
Yeah.
It just isn't worth the investment from a money point of view, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I don't have a Standard deck, alright, I can probably borrow cards if I want to play a PPTQ, but it makes it all a bit harder and just adds this, like, level of, I have to actually get it organized and know what I'm going to be playing, like, a week in advance, which is quite hard in a format as big as this one. So, like, do I end up just, like, not playing PPTQs that much? And, I think that's kind of, like, that's personally kind of where I'm at, especially because my motivation to play PPTQs is quite low right now, because it's like, I don't know, the system kind of sucks and it's going away, and maybe I can just wait until it goes away and play the new system.
And it will be away fairly shortly.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the last season, so we only have like 2 months.
Yeah, so my motivation to play the style of tournament is just like, I don't know, man, like, do I really care?
So I don't want to like bring this up as in like, oh, this is cruddy and I don't have that much motivation, or we don't feel motivated right now. I want to kind of tilt it more into trying to think about it differently. And I want to start that with a really, really simple question, I suppose, is what motivates you, Nathaniel? What motivates you in Magic? But it also can be in other things that on the front face sometimes aren't just like super fun immediately.
Yeah.
What motivates you to do the things you do, the things that you like?
I think that's like a complicated question to answer. Like it sounds simple, obviously, but then like, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff going on to it. I think in regards to Magic, what's always motivated me has been like, I don't know, just like, it feels weird to say like just like a wish to succeed, but kind of just like, I don't know, I think probably like validation to some degree. I think that's what motivates a lot of people. At least I hope it does, otherwise I'm real weird. But
I don't think you're the only one.
Yeah, I think that like tournament results are like validation of yourself and your beliefs that love like, oh, well, I think I'm good at this. Or at least I'm trying to be good at this. I put a lot of time into this. And so it's kind of like there's this cycle, right? Where like you work hard at something and you try and succeed at it so that the hard work can be validated. Sure,
but I'm aware like there's a lot of different things we could do that are very difficult.
Yeah.
And like I think part of motivation is like outcomes.
Sure.
I guess I'm very aware. I'm thinking about this a bit as a therapist because that's my day.
But I think that's an interesting point of view to take into it.
Yes, like, but I guess part of me is like motivation for the things that we do. Part of it can be outcomes. Like for example, some people have jobs because they want money. They don't really care about the job. They just want some cash.
Yeah.
And that's how you get cash. You work or you do a job.
Yeah.
Darn you, capitalist, hierarchical, hegemonic system.
That's the society we live in, so that's what we get. That's what we got.
Yes, but whatever. But I think there's a hell of a lot more to motivation than just like outcomes. Like I could say like, oh, I really want to be on the Pro Tour. I want validation in the same way. I think it would be, I know there is a part of me that would love to be looked up to.
Yeah.
Or acknowledged for my hard work or for my play skill.
Yeah.
I know and perhaps a little bit embarrassingly, it's also like, yeah, I want people to know that. To know I'm good. Yeah. In this community, I want to be known.
I think that's pretty standard, though, for like tournament players.
For sure.
Like I think that's a very normal motivation for people. Mm-hmm.
But I'm aware that much of our time playing Magic is not the thing we want. Sure. Or much of the time, if you're working on something a lot, a lot of the time you spend doing it is not the outcome. So something has to be feeding you during that time. If you only do it for the outcome, so take, for example, the job thing. If you work a job to get money, well, you get paid every 2 weeks. If you work in Magic because you want to be a pro player and or to be well known and thought about,
you get paid maybe.
Maybe, perhaps, a very small percentage of players will reach the level we're talking about where they might be in the Magic community a sort of name that's heard around shops.
Yeah.
Or people listen to your content an awful lot and you're well known. That's a very small...
Or even just, like, has a lot of tournament results.
Yeah, even just, like, has top 8'd a GP. Very few people have done that realistically in regard to the millions of people who play Magic.
Yeah.
And tens, hundreds of thousands of people who have played Magic competitively for that sort of result. So my question is, what feeds us in the meantime? What feeds you in the meantime?
This is fair. I've been thinking about that a little bit. I think that partly I enjoy personally feeling like a mastery of complex systems and understanding things, and like I enjoy feeling like I've achieved an understanding. Mm-hmm. So like even just playing on Modo, you play a bit and you go, oh, that's what I should have done. Or just learning things is like its own small, like, getting paid, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, and I think this links into part of the reason why I personally have been feeling my motivation dipping, which is that, like, a lot of it comes from the social aspect for me.
Mm.
Like, a lot of my friends I met through Magic, a lot of my social circle I know through the game. And so a lot of, like, why I would go on to PPTQs was because, I get to hang out with a bunch of my friends. And, like, the reason why I enjoyed GP so much was because it was kind of like a weekend away with friends, in addition to being, like, a Magic tournament.
Kind of like the coolest sleepover.
Yeah. I mean, basically, yeah. And so one of the things that's been happening with Team Vault is that, like, for various reasons, people have been moving away. We had Alex Murray move back to Australia. We had Leandro move back to Brazil.
People have had to... We've already mentioned before that Dan is moving back. He's moving to France.
I mean, he lived in France for a while, right?
I'm not sure if he did.
I don't know either. Dan has lived in many places.
Yeah.
I know he's been to France several times.
He has tons of family in France.
Yeah, he has family in France.
I guess he's going back in a sense, but I know he's going to have his own place in Paris soon. We also have other people we've played with. Linz has had work and band commitment and has decided he's gonna kind of move his life around, start a new career.
And these things are all exciting for the people who like are changing their lives, for like they're choosing to be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna change what my life is about.
And it's also exciting for us as a friend. You know what I mean? Like, this is all great stuff. I'm really happy for you guys. Or like in some circumstances, like, oh, that sucks. I hope you come back. I hope you can do the things you want. But as a result, we're a bit bare bones.
As a result, like, we just less, we go to a PBTQ and there's just less, like, Vault people there because there are just less Vault people and people are less free. And so I think that, a big part of that has been that, like, if I'm looking at going to a GP and it's like, oh, cool, who else would be going? And it's like, oh, no one really. Okay. I don't really want to spend the money to go on my own.
I mean, there's something there, though. And I would agree, by the way. Like, those who know me know I'm really big into the social aspect. And I think if I wasn't as big into the social aspect, I would have never helped create Team Vault with, like, Team Vault started as something where we were all kind of like, oh, what if this thing happened? But
what if we have like a Magic team and we work together? That would be cool.
But then it became this kind of project of, like, wait, what if we actually do that? Like, what if we get a sponsor? What if we do that and start organizing stuff and do all this stuff? And a lot of the work I put into it as captain, and I think everyone's put work into it on the team. All of us at the beginning and going forward had to put work in to figure out how this thing would work. A lot of that has been like, oh, I'm doing this for the other people here. I'm doing this for my friends, these people I care about, these people I'm working on this massive project with.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing is, like, on one level, there's the outcome of like, oh, I would like to be a pro. I would like to be known as a good player. But actually, I never feel like it's just me working on that project.
Yeah.
It's all of us working together. And that is a lot of the enjoyment I derive from this thing is like, oh, all these people I care about are all working for the same goal. Like, they might also have their own goals, and I want them to succeed in those, but they're also helping me with mine. And so there's this kind of looming question then. I'm thinking, like, back to the original point, like, how do we motivate ourselves to play when there isn't this sort of tangible thing there, the tournament we're preparing for or whatever? How do we keep pushing ourselves, or how do we push each other? You know what I mean? How do we keep ourselves up and moving to do that? And I guess the answer to that obviously is going to be a bit different for everyone.
Yeah. But I don't think anyone has a single answer to...
like the one thing that works to make everyone want to continue doing this thing. But I know.
And for some people, there might not be an answer.
Yes.
For some people, they'll lose their motivation and they'll realize that actually they just don't have the passion necessary for Magic to like grind it.
I also don't think
you have to really want it.
I also think that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. I don't mean to like imply that there's anything wrong with that either, because you have to put a ton of effort in for not very much return, really.
Mm-hmm. You have to really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I know when I wrote some articles about starting to get competitive in Magic, I wrote a series for Murphy's Vault, and I think it's still up there. It'll be a bit old now. Maybe it was a year ago or something like that, before I started writing my thesis properly.
Sure, but like the concept won't have changed.
Yeah, but basically, what I said, one of the most important things to do if you want to get in competitive Magic is just to be very upfront and honest and reflect, what do you want from this thing? Like, what do you really want from it? If you want to be a pro, that's fine. But you also need to be able to hold the fact that there's a very, very, very likely chance that won't happen.
Yeah.
So how do you make it...
kind of like trying to be an actor.
Yes, absolutely. I think you should probably speak into that. I think that's a good parallel.
Well, so I
do both.
Okay, so my experience, I'm not a professional actor by any means. I have acted in like a lot of things, but I've not really been paid for it. And I know a lot of people who have tried to be professional actors, and I have a lot of friends in that kind of sphere. And I think that the thing with acting is that you kind of have to be successful, you have to have this dichotomy within yourself. You have to have like a fire within you that says, I am great.
Mm-hmm.
I am like worth it and I will succeed. And it is just that no one has recognized this yet. But you also have to have a bit of you that's like able to take on criticism and able to adjust and learn and adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, basically, because you'll face rejection so much, you have to be able to maintain yourself in the face of that rejection, while also and maintain that like you still believe you're good and you still believe you're worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that ever falls, then like how do you possibly motivate yourself to apply for so many, like as many jobs as you need to as an actor?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you possibly recover after like the 5th rejection letter in a week?
For sure.
But then also, you do need to be able to adjust and adapt and learn, because otherwise you won't be good. You won't be great. And I think that there is some parallels there with Pro Magic, where you need to have a bit of you that's like, I am good and I can be the best player that I can possibly be.
Yes.
And, I can be the best. Like, you have to show up at a tournament believing that you can win that tournament.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to be able to be like, yeah, I punted that and I made that mistake. And that was my fault, and I'm going to learn from it.
I think what really you're describing is what I would call... It's not just about having that balance, it's also about having that resiliency.
Yeah.
A really strong sense of self where you can screw up, you can mess up, you can punt, you can do whatever, but that isn't going to shake that really strong sense of self that you say, actually, I'm good, though. Like... Yeah, I'm not perfect. I'm learning. But just because I messed up or did poorly in a tournament doesn't mean I'm a cruddy player now. I'm not crap.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, just because I had a hiccup or 10 hiccups.
Yeah.
If you feel like you can keep on going with that and you can see the progress, that's really important. And I guess there's something that I'm like holding right now that is about like, right, well, how do I get into that zone more?
Yeah.
How am I going to stay in that zone when I don't have a weekly tournament that's going to check up on me? Whether it's a PPTQ or something else. Because before, like, as people left Team Vault, like, it was a bit like, oh, lame, no one's going, but I would still go. That wasn't the worry, because that was, like, my thing. I live for the grind, even if it sucks sometimes. So it's kind of like, okay, well, I'll have the PPTQ and we'll see how I do. I love how I'm queued for the WMC. I still have not won a PPTQ.
Sure, yeah.
And yet I'd still keep on going. You know?
Yeah.
Like, but I don't know how that's going to be now that they aren't around. And I'm wondering, like, okay, how am I going to motivate myself? How am I going to stay resilient when I'm just, like, grinding moto by myself to hold myself accountable? I think that's a part of it as well. Is like, I think we were talking a couple weeks back, and it was really good advice to start keeping a spreadsheet of, like, matchups you do and write down what happened.
It just makes your testing feel a lot more tangible and actually does make it more useful as a learning tool.
For me, definitely. It might not be the case for everybody.
Sure.
But I think that I've thought a lot about that, and I think a lot of the reason for it is, like, accountability. It's visibility. Like, you know, when you do a league online, no one knows.
Yeah.
Like,
if you go 0-2 drop, you're like, okay, cool, that's fine. Next one, please.
Yeah, exactly. But that also means you might lose something, which I think can be very motivating, which is a little bit of, I don't want to say shame. Shame's too strong a word, but it's this feeling of like, oh, man, now I'm like 0-3, I'm going up to the board, like, how am I going to pull this back? Like, I'm very aware I'm being seen. I want to be seen as something else. Yeah. I'm being confronted with a different reality than the one that I want. And it sucks.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change it. Whereas I don't get that feeling as much when I 0-3 a league on Moto. Like, I might get a little bit of a bashful phase, but I'm like, oh, no one knows about it. It doesn't matter. And keeping the spreadsheet is one of the ways that keeps me honest with myself.
Well, I think the other important thing there is that, like, everybody 0-3s leagues.
Yes, that is true.
And so, like, you don't need to be like, oh, I 0-3 a league. All right, put it up on the shame board, boys.
Yeah.
We're not forgetting this one.
And that's why I was worried about using the word shame, but I think there is something there that is a bit of egg on the face sort of thing. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
To feel a bit like, ooh, that didn't go so well. Crap. You know what I mean? But yeah, you're right. Everyone is going to have 0-3 leagues.
Yeah. Like, I talk to a lot of, like, Moto Legacy grinders. Like, a lot of them. And a lot of them talk about their experiences online, and like we have Javier Dominguez in the chat, like, you know, current world champion, and he will come into the chat being like, "Oh man, guys, I just like bombed that league." Like yeah, they'll be talking about like, "Hey, so I picked up this legacy deck and I tried it, and I do not know how anyone wins with it. Like, I went 0-3. Like, how do I win with this, guys?" And like the highest caliber of players have off days or run bad because Magic is a game of variance. And like I think that an 0-3 league you should examine it, but it's okay to walk away from it saying, okay, I think I got a bit unlucky.
Yes.
You can also walk away from it. It's also very valid and important to walk away from it, as indeed what I just described. Like, they came to the chat and they were like, okay guys, what am I doing wrong? How can I get better?
Yes.
And I think that that's the important thing to be able to do, is like, sometimes you aren't doing anything wrong, but sometimes you are. You need to be able to tell the difference, and you need to be able to react appropriately. I think so. This is actually, I had a really interesting conversation ages and ages ago at a PPTQ once, where, so before it, I always said there were only two things necessary for people to become really good Magic players, and that was the ability to know when it is your fault and the ability to know when it isn't your fault, which is what I'm describing there. But then I was talking to Jeremy, one of the kind of local Scottish players, who is not your typical Magic grinder.
Yes. In
that he's not in his mid-20s, like, slightly arrogant and very self-affirming.
I mean, that sounds exactly like me. So.
He's like middle-aged. He's actually quite a good dude. I have a lot of time for Jeremy.
Really pleasant guy.
Yeah, really genuinely good person to spend some time with. But I said that to him. We were just having a conversation about like Magic and what makes good players good and stuff like that. And he said, I think you need a third thing. I think you need to be able to like react appropriately to the knowledge that it is or isn't your fault.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, I think you're right. Because I know some people who, you know, you point out, they'll talk about like, okay, so wait, so what went wrong that game? And you'll point out like, okay, so on this turn, you made this decision and that was incorrect. And it caused you to, like, this causes cascading chain of events that led to you losing the game. And, like, but they won't, like, process it.
Or emotionally, they won't be available to that.
I guess that's kind of what I mean, is that, like, intellectually, they'll recognize that you're right, but emotionally, they won't be able to accept it.
They won't have that openness to be able to say,
and, like,
all right,
it is hard.
Yeah.
When we show up to a tournament, we're putting, like, our I just talked about all the validation for all the hard work you put in, right? You show up to the tournament, you've practiced, you've played like a ton of leagues on Modo, or you've playtested a bunch with your friends or whatever, and you know what you're doing, you've put a bunch of hard work in, and you go 0-2 drop, and you're like, man, do I suck? Or like, you lose in the quarterfinals, and theoretically that's a good result, but like, it doesn't feel like it. And you're like, oh, wait. So you're already thinking, man, do I suck? So you talk to your friends, and they kind of say, and like, they don't say to you, yes, you suck, but they do, like, they affirm the bit of your brain that is already saying, yes, you suck.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what I mean. And that, like, they'll say, oh yeah, well, you made this mistake. And like, it can be really hard to go from, like, to be able to hear that and emotionally process it in a way that's like, okay, but that's fine because I'm learning, and that's the goal.
Yes.
And like
being okay with being a novice, really,
yeah, or even like not a novice, but like good players make mistakes too.
Yeah, and we still have more to learn. Everyone does.
There are plenty of great players who I guarantee you, if you sat them down with a deck that they're like unfamiliar with, especially in like a format like Legacy or Modern, but even in some like decks like Standard, like the fact that there can be so much like slight tangent, but there was we're not definitely getting into this, but Matt Sperling made a Twitter thread about Jeremy Dezani and a strange pick he made in the Proto. If you want to know more about it, just go on his Twitter. We're not going to talk about it too much here, but basically what it ended up turning into in one part of the thread was a discussion about limited strategy with some of the players who were on Dezani's team, saying like, okay, well this was our strategy for the draft of Guilds of Ravnica, and I don't know if you've seen this.
Was this LSV's comment?
So LSV's comment was the thing I'm leading up to. But did you see their discussion of the actual strategy they have?
Yeah, where they were saying like,
so their strategy was like they would force white.
Yeah, is it
unplayable?
Yeah, you want to be like Selesnya. Golgari is okay.
Yeah, Selesnya and Golgari are fine. Yeah, but you want to be Boros, and like Dimir is okay, but we view is it as unplayable? So taking blue cards is like we would only take them. Like, there are, like, gold Dimir cards to us.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, okay, whether or not that is a correct estimation of the format, and I'm not convinced it's 100% correct, but whether or not, clearly that had some success for them, because otherwise they wouldn't have reached those conclusions. But whether or not there's a correct estimation of the format, the fact that, and this is what LSV said, the fact that there is so much different opinion on Limited, like, between very good players. Mm-hmm. All the people at the Pro Tour are excellent. They've all worked hard to get there. And several of the people who were saying these things were good limited players. It wasn't like it was like, oh, okay, well these are the good limited players saying this, and these are the bad limited players saying this. They're all great players.
Yeah, and there was a lot of hot debate.
And they all disagreed fervently along like very clear lines. And you're like, okay, well the fact that there's so much disagreement kind of indicates that like there's a lot of different ways to do this. And like basically, to bring it back to what my actual point was, like, even the best players will disagree about stuff, which will mean that sometimes it's playstyle differences, but sometimes the best players are wrong. And, like, generally what determines being the best players is not being right all the time.
Yes.
It's learning from when you're wrong.
Being able to take those hits and being able to accept the fact I was wrong and move forward from that. It's and use that in a way that's productive for this thing you want to do.
Yes. And being able to go like, okay, all right, I thought this, that was incorrect. And my line of reasoning that led me to that was faulty. That's okay, because now I know that I was wrong and I can be better. But like, getting past that first hurdle is really hard.
Yes, it is. And I think many players, even players who have a reasonable amount of success in Magic, get pretty far in this game and get some pretty good results and are limited by the fact that they still can't engage on this level.
Well, I mean, it's the pretty standard grinder mentality that I've run into personally, is like, I can't admit that I was wrong because then I will have been wrong about this thing that I put so much of myself into. If I'm wrong about this thing I put so much of myself into, then who am I?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it's just a very common thing you see. I've found around like mid-level grinders is they don't have enough success to have in Magic to have the self-assurance such that they can be wrong. but they have enough success that they feel that like some part of their validation in themselves is contingent on being right.
Mm-hmm.
So they end up in this situation where they like make very strong statements because they have to establish like, you know, like an authority within this arena. And all the time I've seen in these kind of communities is spent making fun of like worse players.
Yeah,
because,
which is
like
terrible.
Yeah,
and really elitist.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a way of like reaffirming like, oh, but I'm good.
Yes,
because I know that this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, it just. I think it's something that the Magic community as a whole, maybe not the community as a whole, but just like on an individual level, everyone has to struggle with.
Yeah, but I feel like what we're talking about here is a willingness to be vulnerable. Yeah, I mean, and to say like, okay, if I really love this thing and I want to make it a big part of my life, because I think that actually is also part. I realized as you were talking, a big part of one of the outcomes I would like for this game is to have it be a part of my life that really adds something to it and is part of my identity. And, you know, maybe I could even do it as a job for some amount of years in my life, or that might lead to something that I'm really interested to, or I might do it alongside my job like I do today. Yeah. You know what I mean? But either way, to have a place where like this thing is important to me, and that's okay. Yeah. And that is a very vulnerable position to be in because, like you're saying, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be times you're wrong. And that's going to be the only way you grow is to have this thing that's really important to you bite you in the ass and say, hey, buddy, you really messed that up. Yeah. And you go, like, you have the decision to kind of put up a brick wall against it. And this is where I see a lot of people burn out, to link it back to motivation. Is they constantly just hold this brick wall up where nothing goes in, and eventually it feels like they've forgotten why they started doing this thing in the first place. Yeah,
but also I feel like there's this moment, which I had recently, and I still don't think I've really climbed over. I think I'm still at that phase of my Magic career where you realize how little you know. Yeah. And you hit the moment of like, oh, this game is so complicated and so difficult, and there's so many things about it that I don't know. Mm. And like once you hit that point, for a lot of like grinders, it can be really hard because you're like, okay, well now I have to figure out, do I want to put in all the work to get to the point that I thought I wanted to be? If you know what I mean.
Yes. Now that I know how tall Everest is.
Now I know how big the mountain is, do I actually want to climb it? Because I didn't look that tall from the bottom. Yeah. But now I'm halfway up and it's really tall. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay. And a lot of people I think reach that point and are like, oh, I don't. Yeah. I didn't come into this thinking I want to be a master at this and it'll take me this long. I came into it being like, I want to be good at this and it'll take me this time. And then they reach the point where they're like, oh, in order to be as good as I want to be, I have to invest way more time than I thought I would. I'll go do something else. Mm-hmm. And that's a totally valid decision.
Totally okay. Yeah.
Unless you're Duncan.
No one can see this, but Nathaniel, just for the entirety of that pause, stared so poignantly at the microphone. Yeah. So he's looking at you, Duncan. Yeah. When you hear this,
if he hears this,
he will.
Maybe.
He better.
Okay.
Know that Nathaniel was staring right at you. Yeah. I've completely lost my train of thought now.
Fair.
I mean, I was gonna say.
I think we had a good conversation on motivation.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is what I wanted to say. I think it's important to say that, as important as it is to hold up motivation and to keep up with it, and to make sure you still are doing this thing you want to do and you feel like you want to do it, I think it's really important to also say, like, dude, it's totally okay if you don't want to do this. Yeah. Like, it's okay if you've had enough. That's all right. Like, it's only fun if it's actually fun.
Yeah, and it's only a problem for you if you, like, insist that you haven't when you have, if you know what I mean.
Yes, and this is the level I think about with burnout. And this was actually the very first article I wrote for Murph. Was about where I almost quit Magic. Yeah. Because I was 100% burnt out. And the reason for this is this was during Marvel Standard.
Sure. Standard was really quite bad.
Yeah, but I was forcing myself to go to these tournaments, forcing myself to go to GPs, even though I hated all the decks. Standard was not fun. I wasn't enjoying it at all. So I was kind of just dragging my feet through this. And looking back, like, it was a really good learning opportunity. I'm glad I got it. But looking back, like, I really wish I went to GP Amsterdam and was like, I'm just going to play Modern. Like, I'm just going to play a bunch of Storm. Like, I just bought Storm at the time. I was really excited about that. I was jamming on Moto. It was fun. Or, like, borrowed some Legacy and did that instead of playing this tournament that, like, after the second round, I actually just didn't care about.
Yeah, you were like, I don't want to play this. This is just not enjoyable.
Yeah, I'd rather just play a bad deck.
Yeah.
Actually, that was the level I was at. It's like why I hate this so much, but I feel like I am supposed to play the best deck and do that. And it was like, actually, I forgot like the first thing is that Magic is really enjoyable for me.
Yeah, it's good because it's the best game ever made.
Yes,
that's why we play it.
Exactly,
it's because it's such a good game. And when it stops being a good game, there are all the other factors, but like that's the core of it, right?
Yeah. After that tournament, I nearly didn't I lost my winning end. I nearly didn't get out of bed the next day to go and do any Magic.
Sure.
But I ended up doing it. And then I decided I would take 3 months off. And those 3 months were like really, really good for me. And I think also like I guess what I'm trying to say is like any decision you make as well about when this is fun and when this is not, it's not final either. You can always go back and change your mind. And I feel like we're talking a lot about being open to criticism, but I'm saying just being open as a person is really valuable to finding success.
Yeah.
I think that's not just in Magic. I think that's in everything. Is that being open to change your mind or to have a different opinion about something, or to think about something differently is only going to make you do better at that thing.
Yeah.
But it's work. It's work to be open. It's really easy to stay closed-minded and to decide something once and for all and be done with it. And I feel like if that's the way you get better, like you have to find something that really drives you in this game. Whether it's the people you spend time with and you care about and are there on the road with you in the train or share the beers with you afterwards. Or it's some specialist deck you just love.
Yeah, it's some aspect of the game that like really just speaks to you.
Yeah. Or
and like sometimes it can just be the winning.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the outcome.
Yeah.
There are some people that just live for the win, and when they win, it's so sweet. Yeah, that can. I'll remember that.
Yeah, the payoff doesn't either happens enough or doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's good enough.
Yeah,
and a lot of people. Yeah, some people who play PPTQs, especially, don't play PPTQs really competitively. They play them because they want to play like Magic. They want to test the deck that they've brought and see how good that is, or they want to like see like, oh, okay, well these are the guys who like play to a high level in this area. Okay, how do I match up against them? And like they're not really like, oh, I think I'm going to come in and win the whole thing. They're like, we'll see what happens. And I'm just kind of down for whatever. I just want to play some Magic. It's a fun game.
And to be honest, while I haven't been shining particularly well at GPs, I will say that my results in general at tournaments have gotten so much better since I started being much more affable with that attitude of like, I'm not here. Like a lot of tournaments before I came, I was like, I'm here to win it. Yeah. And that's it.
I'm going to climb over the bodies of my enemies.
Exactly. And whatever. And I've ended up doing a lot better since like, look at the WMC. When I showed up to that tournament, and it wasn't a tiny tournament. It was like 150 people or something like that.
Sure.
Not massive, not tiny. But I showed up to that tournament and I felt like complete butts because I was super sick. And I just like showed up and I was like, actually the most important thing here is like, no, I want to play for Scotland. Like there's this deck I like, and this limited format fun. Like this is going to be good. I just want to like throw my hat in the ring. Like, sure. I don't really mind what happens. And I remember talking to, I think I said this before as well. I feel like I'm talking about a lot of things I've already talked about. But when I said in like the quarterfinals, I was playing against James Love. Or no, semifinals.
Yeah.
And if you win this, you go to the WMC. I remember saying to him, and I honestly did feel this way 100%, like, I really don't mind who wins. Like, let's just play and see who comes out on top. But if I lost at that point, I really wouldn't have been that
You wouldn't have been like, oh man.
I wouldn't have beat myself up for it. To be honest, I would have been really happy for James, which is like such a change from how I was a year ago.
Sure.
And how I played competitive Magic, or a year and a half ago for sure. I think it's a good change, to be honest.
Yeah, sounds like it. sounds like a really healthy attitude to take towards tournaments. So kind of working on that myself, really. So working on the not measuring myself against the successes of other people.
Yeah, and I think that is a hard one because, especially if you look for validation in things, I think, like in this game, if one of the reasons you play it is to feel good about yourself or to flex this muscle that you are good at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Being tactical, strategic, and pitting that against other people. I think, like, the win-win situation is, like, if you win, haha, validation.
Yeah.
If you lose, oh, that didn't take anything away from my sense of self, though.
Yeah.
I know I'm still good at this. Like, if that's how you approach the game, then it's like, well, it's really hard to lose. Like, to really have a bad day in Magic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless you're playing
Modern.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. I think that is exactly where I'm at on that. And I feel really bad. I'm not looking for it that much, the GP Liverpool. But
I'm gonna cast some Goblin Guides and see what happens.
It's okay. I'll fizzle a lot. No. I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna do that really luck-sacky thing where you
do in testing all the time against me, where you're like, well, I think I need to get lucky here, and you cast me on Morphos, and you're like, oh, you're dead, and I'm like, God damn it, Holt.
No, the thing to do is go off with Storm. You need 6 mana in the gifts and the mana dork, but go off with 5.
Okay.
And then they're like, you don't have enough mana. Give you the Metamorphose and the Passing Flames.
And you're like, okay, cool, cast another ritual from hand? And
no, you Metamorphose into the ritual.
Oh, sure, yeah, okay.
And then you win. But yeah, I'm hoping for a lot of that.
That's fair. It sounds like a reasonable approach to take. Get a bit lucky, play well, but get a bit lucky.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what we're going to talk about this week. I think that we've covered some interesting topics. I certainly have found this episode to be a pretty interesting one.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening, everybody. If you want more of us, then you can find us on Twitter. I am at F_Ironside, and Holt is
at Cap'n Powerhouse. That's CAPNPOWERHAUS.
If you want more of the content that our sponsor, Murphy's Vault, produces, then go to murphysvault.com. They have their web store there, as well as a whole article-laden website. If you click on the banner.
You can read all the articles I was talking about today. Yeah. There's a whole series there.
They also have, I think, a PPTQ coming up at some point this season, so you can buy tickets for that, which you should do if you're a Scottish local and wanting to play in a PPTQ. The last ever Murphy's Vault PPTQ.
They might be English as well. You can come up from London. It's only a 40-pound train.
It's only a really long way.
Yeah, it's fun.
You can get a coach. It's fine.
Oh, that's a worse option.
We got me and my girlfriend got a £10 flight to London.
That's pretty sick.
With Ryanair.
I mean, if you do that, you can come up for the PPTQ. It only takes 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's probably less time than just like driving to your local shop, realistically, if you live in London.
Yeah.
So I assume...
So for all our London listeners,
yes.
Come on down. So I think that's us. Feel free to check out any of the things that we talked about below or talked about before. Hit us up, subscribe to the podcast if you want to hear about the next thing. Follow us on Twitter and to find out about it.
And to be honest, what I know, at least for me, out of personal interest, perhaps, if you were really engaged by this and you've been thinking a lot about motivation, hit us up. Let us know what motivates you. I'd be really interested to hear that and really hear what helps people drive themselves in this game.
Yeah, I would too, actually. I think it's a really interesting thing to take a lot of perspectives on.
Yeah.
But, as always, we've been From the Vault, and you guys have been fantastic.